This is GWEN Talks, where intimate conversations reveal, heal, inspire, and entertain. And now, here's your host, Tess Cacciatore.
Hi, and welcome to GWEN Talks. This is part 3 of a summer series that's going on. And today's July 4th. When I found out that Saturday was July 4th, I debated whether to have a show or not. And I thought, what better time and what better place and what better day to have a show than on July 4th, especially when it comes to independence. How independent are we today in this world? So I started thinking about what would be a good topic, and mental slavery came up. So today's topic is freedom of mental slavery. So in the individual world, mental slavery can be limiting thoughts, it could be past experiences or trauma, or it could be passed down from your ancestors. And I invite everyone to look into what is in your private life that might hold you back, might be limiting beliefs, and might still be a cause of mental slavery in your life. From the individual to community and community to global, I started thinking about United States was free in 1776, which was 244 years ago. When you think about countries in Africa, they've only been free for the last 50 to 60 years. One of the countries that I went and had deep experiences was the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when you think that we were free in the United States in 1776, but it was in 1885 that King Leopold II took control of DRC. He never stepped foot in there, but he raped and pillaged the land of its resources and brought people as slaves to his country. And it went on and on and on until present day. They were not even free until 1960. So think about that, that's only 60 years ago. One of the things I'm very passionate about in Congo is the resources there. And I do a lot of advocacy and activism around Blood Coltan, which is about the women and children getting raped brutally on a daily basis in Eastern Congo because of coltan. And it's a mineral that we all take advantage of on a daily basis because it's a mineral that is conducted in our cell phones and computers. So how can we take responsibility as citizens carrying a cell phone, using a computer every single day, and how dependent we are on technology, yet on the other side of the world, there's women and children that are being killed and brutally raped because of this precious mineral. So how do we become free of mental slavery? The present day, society, racism, the pandemic, and how do we begin to reveal the heal? I gathered some of the most amazing minds that I know in my life, and they're here as this panelist that I'm so proud of having together today. This is going to be a really deep conversation. I have to say, in all the years that I've done this kind of format of talk shows or panels, I'm really quite nervous and very excited about this conversation because I think this is going to be a deep dive into what's going on in the world and how can we provide solutions. So first off, we have Cherise Pierce. She's an author. She works at Union Rescue Mission. I met her when she was up as a program director in Hope Gardens, which is a homeless shelter for women and children. But right now she serves men, over 175 men that are homeless in Skid Row, which is the epicenter of homelessness in our country. She's also a mother of 2 boys that are now grown, but I want to talk to her about how it was to raise 2 sons in this world. Then we have my dear friend, Erin Toppenberg. She's a HeartMath certified trainer, a yoga instructor, and through HeartMath, I believe she's going to bring some solutions to the table that we can talk about and take to next steps. Then we have Shannon Amos, who is a yoga instructor, healer, and wellness expert. She's also a mother of a daughter. Then we have our single guy here, John White. I love his combination. He's an investment banker and a stand-up comedian. So I think you have to have a lot of laughter when you're dealing with banking, I suppose. He had a 25-year marriage with an African-American, and he's raised 2 biracial children. And then last but not least, we have Anze Mofor, who's the LA chapter director of African Women Leadership Organization, which I'm a member of. I'm so proud to be a part of that organization, and she's doing a fabulous job in the LA chapter. And also yesterday, she was one of the moderators of this incredibly intense and amazing conversation that we had about how to stop rape and say no to rape in Africa. And we'll talk about that as well. But welcome, everyone. And thank you, Anze, for being my guest co-host today.
Thank you, Tess, and thank you, everyone. I think that this is going to be an amazing conversation. Thank you to all the audience members that have tuned in. I'm looking forward to making sure that we do not leave here the same, and we all leave here with something that we can take to challenge our comfort zone for all of us, blacks, whites, blue, pink, whatever color you call yourself, for everybody to actually leave with something and some action steps that we can take to be able to um, feel that freedom from slavery or whatever kind of oppression it is from the mind. So thank you. Yes.
Absolutely. One of the things I just wanted to recap yesterday, because I thought it was very important information that people around the world don't know. And that was the culture of rape in Africa. And then during the pandemic, the numbers have increased. And I was quite taken back, and it destroyed me on an emotional level to hear some of the things and the reasons why these men are actually raping not only women or their wives, but young girls. And now I hear yesterday, I knew it went to young babies, but now it's newborn babies. And I can't even imagine what kind of slavery they must be in the blueprint of their newborn life and the mothers that have to have that. What was your takeaway from yesterday? And I'm so excited to be part of the solution with what we're going to be doing with ALO.
Thank you. First of all, the culture of rape is everywhere in the world. There's different kind of culture of rape in Asia. There's different kind of culture of rape in Africa and the United States. But we were focusing on Africa yesterday, and the issues have been very glaring, but they've been ignored. Some of it is done in a traditional form, which we all know it and we identify it, but then nothing is being done about it. You find children that are as young as age of 8 that are being given to be married to men that are as old as 60. And part of what they were talking about as far as newborn babies is that there's certain rituals where they would tell people who would want to go seek some kind of traditional type of riches, and they would tell them that if they, part of what they would need to do in the ritual is to have sex with a newborn baby and things like that. I've actually heard of something also in Indonesia where they would say something like that, or if a girl is raped, then she gets killed because she's unclean. So all of these things combined together, it's just the mindset of the people that are creating those kinds of laws and the mindset of the people that are not doing anything about it. If you are a leader and you live in a country and in a world where something is happening and you know that that thing is affecting everybody in one way, shape, or form, and you're not doing anything about the perpetrators, and then the victims are shamed, they hide, and if they speak up, they get killed. We had one case recently in California with the girl Vanessa who died at Fort Hood, and she was raped, and the moment she said she was going to talk about it, she was found dead. And so we have these things happening everywhere. Yesterday was focused on Africa, but it's an issue, it's an epidemic that is everywhere in the world. And how do we stop it? One of the key things, which I was grateful it came from one of the panelists, was we need to start changing the mindsets and the conversations that we have with our young boys and our young girls. This mindset of patriarchy and the traditional concepts that have been embedded inside of the system, people think that it is okay to do this because there are no consequences. They're not going to stop doing it because there are no consequences. And so that's how it transfers from one part of the world to another, or from one father to a child. How does a man grow up, give birth to a young kid? That child doesn't grow up thinking one day I'm going to rape a kid so that I can become rich, or one day I'm going to need sex and I'm going to ask for it by force from a woman. They learn it. Just like racism, it is learned. And it is either learned by picking up habits from the environment, or from watching their parents doing something, or from whatever they call it, epigenetic trauma or something. Like, it's passed on, it's learned. And so the main thing that was spoken yesterday was that each and every one of us has a responsibility. If you have a nephew, a cousin, a son, At a very young age, we need to start teaching them how to treat women, how to respect themselves first, and how to treat women at a young age, because there are cultures and traditions that, um, I'm sorry, if there is a guy and a girl and both of them are studying, they usually would let the guy study and they'll pull the girl out and say, oh, he's a man, he needs to study because he needs to get a job and all that stuff. No, they both need that education. They both need to be taught. They both need to learn about their body, their sexual organs, and all of that stuff. And if they don't learn it, somebody will teach them. And 98% of the time, it is not what they need to know. And that's why we see all of this stuff. While we're trying so hard to solve the problem that we have now, we have a whole new generation that's going to grow up and learn the exact same thing. And 60 years from now, they'll be crying, they'll be fighting the same fight. So why not start teaching them from a younger generation? That was one of the best messages that I got yesterday from a he for she member who was a panelist. And the other one was that if we make these rapists not famous, but actually put them on blast and set examples on them. Some people went as far as saying to be castrated. They would understand that that's a crime that would take them to a level, would create consequences that they probably do not want to face. And is it worth that moment of pleasure? Probably no. So if it's life imprisonment, castration, whatever it is, but the suggestion and the proposal, which was going to be taken into legislation, is that they need to create a very, very strong repercussion for any kind of rape. And when people know that and put their names out there, because a lot of these rapists, especially in Africa and all of these indigenous areas, they don't get reprimanded for it.
So you bring up a lot about the ancestry, and you and I have talked about this on very deep conversations. I think that this would be a great conversation to have and open up to the panel members. And for me to say the ancestry thing, I had kind of a bump up against it, because ever since I was a child, I've always been about equality and going against racism and working across the bridge and going to Africa for the last 20 years. You know, so I kind of went, that took me back when you said that. And then I said, okay, I need to be in that uncomfortable zone to say, what is it that I can do? So does anybody on the panel have anything to say about that topic, about the ancestral side of how we adopt or how we inherit our mental slavery?
I'll go. Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, I think when we think of mental slavery and sort of the state of the mind of discerning between liberation and enslavement gets twisted. And I don't know, it's like we become trapped in misinformation. And this misinformation is handed down by generation by generation. And so I think we're at this precipice now. We're at this place where we are going to have to do some unlearning of the things that we've been taught, from the history that's been omitted, from the truth that's been omitted. And it really begins with us taking a step with ourselves to do the inner work with ourselves, to want and to desire the real information. You know, I think earlier we were talking offline before this conversation about epigenetics and how we carry trauma in our genes, and how our ancestors, and we're carrying this trauma that's been inherited from generation to generation. Along with that genetic trauma, we're also carrying the information, whether it's coded in our genes or it's been programmed in our minds. We have to get to a place to where we're willing to step outside of our comfort zone to get educated on the truth, so that moving forward, we can start to address these real wounds, these real issues. Even the 4th of July itself is a celebration. It's supposed to be a celebration of America's birthday. But when we look at the real history of what the 4th of July is, we can go a lot deeper, into what the truth is and how it didn't really equal freedom for all people. And so the more that we get educated on the truth, I think the more we have a chance at really addressing the issues that are in front of us. And it's going to start with us. It's going to start with, the present generations. And while sometimes we can't reach back and change our parents or our grandparents, we can start to do the work for ourselves. And I think once we do that, it starts to blossom out into our community and beyond.
I love that. What does that look like? What is a solution? Anza, I know you had a question for John as well, so I don't want to be remiss in presenting that question because I know it was very compelling.
Well, I think my question for John is from a different angle. I wanted to know from him what difference does he think that from a white person's perspective, what does he think that a white person may not see growing up as a white person before he came across or got married to an African American? There is that difference in being shielded from the truth. And when you come across an African American and you see the realities of what it is, and you have African American kids, what are some of the examples of the challenges that African Americans face that you notice as a father? If you were to say, as a young boy growing up, I didn't see these things, I didn't experience them, and I didn't know them. But now that my kids are here and they're African Americans, and my ex-wife is dealing with these things, I could see her pain, I could see what my children are dealing with. And how do you, from that perspective of growing up as a white person, see that difference? And how, when you experienced it, how would you talk to your kids, and how would you express this difference to them so that they can understand and deal with that kind of trauma?
A long, big question. A lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's a very long question. I was just trying to make sure.
I would just say it's hard for me to keep track of, but I would say the biggest thing for me is, to my white friends, is to say it's real. It's real. And I think for racism to persist, there's an element of denial that in the white mindset, it doesn't exist, or if it does, it's the KKK. And then most people feel like me, I really don't harbor those feelings, so we're good. They really don't understand that it's systemic and it's out there. I remember when I was raised, my parents, they used the N-word, and we have black friends. Well, they were white in the 60s, and we lived in Maryland. We wanted to be part of this, not a country club, but a local swim pool when it got hot. And I heard my parents talk about how it wasn't allowed, black folks weren't allowed to go there. My parents thought that was messed up. But I do remember come summer, the first hot day, we went to the pool. So my point is, I'm not being hard on my parents, but they weren't down for racism, but in that very practical moment, they wanted to go to the pool. So they went. And so I think the question is, there's the acknowledgement that it's there. Going to Yosemite with my 2-year-old son asking his mom, what does the N-word mean? I mean, that'll break your heart. I mean, it's just there. I mean, and I think if you want to deny or convince yourself as a white person it's not there, you can kind of get there, because day in and day out, the world kind of looks the same. But then when I got married and started raising my kids, there's moments where it's messed up. It's real. I went to the bank and they acted like I owned the damn bank. My wife came in 15 minutes later. They asked him for 4 forms of ID, subtle stuff like that. So I would just say that it's real, and that what's going on currently with the social unrest and stuff, it's a long time coming. We've had 400 years to deal with it during good times and bad times. We've never felt the need, or it was an inconvenient thing. And it's from my standpoint, I'm vested in it because I've got Black friends and I've got a Black family, and I want to change it. And it's glaring there. It's there for you if you really want to see it. And I think it's been an inconvenient truth for a lot of white people. They don't like looking in the mirror. They don't like what they see.
Yeah, especially white men too. Go ahead.
All right. John, you were telling a story about the pool, and I think I've heard that story before. Would you mind sharing that again?
Well, the pool, yeah, I think I did, but I'll say it again. So I was in the East Coast. My parents wanted to join this pool so that we could swim, but they found out that Blacks weren't allowed. And there was a couple in our apartment complex. They were Blacks and we were friends. And so my parents thought that was messed up. Like, yeah, that's really screwed up. And my point was, when it came time for the summer, my butt was there at the pool. So my parents didn't like the issue at one level, but they still, from a family perspective, they joined the pool. They didn't protest, they didn't boycott, and I was in the water, and my friend was not, because she was Black. So that's my point. I guess the point I was trying to make there is, even when we're faced with it, what stand are we willing to take to make it better? And in that instance, I think my parents were typical of a lot of white folks. It's messed up. It's messed up. Oh, it's fringing in on my lifestyle, how I live my life. Ooh, I'm maybe not going to do the right thing in that moment.
Excellent. I think the reason why I wanted you to share that was because when Tess is mentioning the trauma, and we talk about epigenetic trauma, it's a thing that most white people feel uncomfortable to put themselves in a position of discomfort. You're already uncomfortable. They find it easy and okay to say, oh, that's bad, but they can't do anything about it. They don't want to do anything about it because it will create discomfort for them. And that's where that divide begins, because the Black person cannot stay in that discomfort. It's not a place that they feel comfortable in, or that they can even sit in. It's like literally sitting on a hot furnace. It burns you and you want to jump off of it. And so when they want to go protest, it's like, why are they protesting? They're protesting because they're coming to get my comfort zone, get me out of my comfort zone, and I don't want to. I don't like what they're doing to you, but I don't want to get out of my comfort zone. And I think that that's where the divide is. And that's why I would say to Tess that we all need healing. What Shannon is saying, that healing is something that we need to do from the inside. As much as white people Black people need the healing from being enslaved, the one that enslaved them needs the healing, because their mindset to actually be the one to say, no, you cannot come into the pool because you're less of a human being. You're not worthy. No human being that is sane, or that's kind, or that's normal, or that's not feeling fear or hurt or something on the inside of them that makes them feel better than somebody else will do such a thing. So whatever it is that's hurting you to think that somebody else is less than you, is there. And like John is saying, it's glaring. And if you ignore it, it's gonna keep growing, and epigenetics, it will transfer to your kids. And that's how it's gonna continue to grow until we both all come to the table and say, hey, listen, if John is not gonna get in the pool, if Anza is not gonna get in the pool, then John, I'm not getting in that pool either.
Well, yeah. And we want to talk about a lot, but it's what Shannon said about unlearning. Just later on, Google Charlie Rose and Toni Morrison. And there's a lot of focus rightfully on how Black folks have been disadvantaged, and just all the hardship and they, reparations. I'm all for all of that stuff. But the point I want to bring up about Toni Morrison said was, she said, in my family, I always knew we had the moral high ground, that we were right, that what black folks, white folks were doing to us was wrong. And then she looks at Charlie Rose and goes, think about the mindset of the white people who think that their superiority is based upon putting people down. What a tenuous, unsettled existence that is. And so so to me, when we talk about freedom, like I was thinking, here I'm a white male on the 4th of July, I'm the closest thing to freedom, but I was raised white in America. And so I have a lot of mental slavery about discrimination and thoughts. And even like if there is discrimination, somehow there's a rationalization. What did he or she do to deserve that? Because clearly the system can't be that messed up. Well, the reality is it is. And don't trot out LeBron James and Obama and Serena Williams to the exceptional black folks and say, why can't you all do it? They're exceptional human beings. So anyway.
I think, it comes back to being complacent, is being complicit. And we're now in a time where we have to take responsibility, um, for all of these untruths. But it's difficult for many people and for white people. And I'm biracial. So even speaking to my own experience with my own mom, one of the things, who is European, of European descent, is white guilt. And, a lot of times when we're having these difficult conversations, I hear, or I've heard even apologies. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And sort of carrying that, there's a burden that comes with that. It's a heaviness that comes with that for the person who's not of color, they want to be compassionate, but at the same time, how can you move from being just compassionate and from being sorry that this is happening to someone outside of you? Or even like John, you said your parents were at the pool and it's, yeah, that's messed up and I'm sorry for them, but it all comes back to all of us. And that idea of separateness, if and I think it was Martin Luther King, or that, I can't remember the quote. I know you'll remember the quote, but where when one thing happens to one person, it happens to us all.
Injustice to one is injustice to all.
Yes, injustice to one is injustice to all. And so when we think about that, we've in American culture have been really taught this idea of separateness. Those kids, those cages, the kids that are in cages, those are those kids over there. It's not happening to us, but the moment that we would see one of our children ripped out of our arms, and the whole narrative changes. And so this is where we really have to dig in and see that connection that's between all of us. As a Black woman living in, who identify as a Black woman, I identify probably on every spectrum. So I'm a Black woman, biracial, LGBTQ. I've been an employee and an entrepreneur. So I've sort of faced like every ism that a person can face in a lifetime. And yet I didn't realize how heavy it was until I moved out of the country. And I like to use the premise of I moved to Southeast Asia for a year, and I was just a brown person in a sea of brown people as I traveled. And when I went to Africa, I was just another Manzungo. I was a foreigner, but I was still another brown or Black person in a sea of people. And I didn't realize how heavy it was living in the US until I left. And I equate it like this: if you were an aquarium and you were swimming in filthy water, you learn to swim in the filthy, murky water. You just learn to breathe through it. You learn to move through it. But once you leap out of that water into a new fishbowl and the water is clean and clear, all of a sudden you realize, wow, I didn't have to swim so hard. I didn't have to work so hard to just get from here to there. And it really changed my whole life and my whole perspective on race in the US. And it's not that racism doesn't exist in other cultures, because it's global. It is the pandemic, it is a global dis-ease. And it has all come from this, European and Western colonialization and all the different modalities of it that we would have to unlearn, including religion. And so you start challenging these very uncomfortable teachings and learnings, you're going to get pushback. And so this is where we are right now. You have a part of the country that's ready and willing to do the work, and you have a part of the country that is not wanting to unlearn these things, because this is now going to take them completely out of comfort zone. And the anger that we see is just a symptom of fear. People are afraid of change.
Fear, and that's why we are having these kind of conversations, difficult or otherwise. And I want to encourage the people that are in the room to put some questions down below that Anze and all of us will be able to answer towards the end of the show. One of the things that seems to be like a recurring theme is the biracial thing. And I know, Charisse, you had an experience you shared with us this morning before the show, that your mother was married for a brief time in the Midwest to a Caucasian man and the experience there. I want you to talk about that. And also, I have a lot of African American friends that are mothers, and specifically you have 2 sons. And I even have heart palpitations when they talk about the fear that they have when their sons leave the house just to go to the corner store, go to school, go to wherever. It's an important topic that I think we need to talk about, because that is a point of slavery. And how can we take that experience that you mothers have and try to see how we can shine a spotlight on it for healing as well?
So, Tess, I will talk about just briefly about the experience that I had growing up in the Midwest, early to mid 80s, African American mom and Caucasian stepfather. Now, my brother and I are fairly young. We've been, we came to St. Louis from New York, from an African American father who was pretty much verbally abusive to my mother, and she's literally trying to go make a better life for us. So we're in St. Louis, and now she is in a relationship. She marries a Caucasian guy. Well, from a very, very young age, we knew something was wrong because of the ridicule and the how bad my mother was talked about, and how people treated them, or how they would treat him versus her if they were together. And she would always say, Charisse, don't worry, don't listen to them. God, she's a very strong Christian woman. And that's what kept her. But on my end, kids made fun of us. We weren't allowed to go certain places in the neighborhood because, oh, your stepfather is white, or your father is white, or your mother is a traitor, and all of these things. So I want to touch on what Enza said. Racism is truly taught. It's a learned type situation. There is no way in the world people are like this if they have not been taught, or if they have not heard it from somewhere else. When you look around, there's this video that's been kind of going around where you see this Black young man. He's singing. The kid can be only about 11, and he's singing, but then the little white boy joined in with his guitar. They know nothing about each other. They just downloaded. He was singing without music, and the little white kid brought his music together, and they started singing. Now, of course, probably parents were behind that, but that was taught. That was a taught move right there. And then I want to take it all the way back 400 years, where divided started there. When we were slaves, or when our ancestors were slaves, there was pure division right there. The white was in the house, the Black was in the cotton field. And that is where it stemmed. And even government was based around all of that, So think about all these years that we have been playing second fiddle, or we've been trying to keep up, or we've been trying to go that extra mile just to go the mile the white person went. So it's deeply rooted. It is definitely deeply rooted. And then I'll bring us back up to current as me raising my two sons. Man, I tell you, I pray so hard for those two young men, even when they lived in the household. I could hear sirens go past the house, and my sons would be out, and I would just pray. And then I'm calling, "Are you okay? Where are you? Are you anywhere near the house?" It's just panic mode. You know, um, one of my sons is 21, one is 33. One is away now at school. I'm not even with him, and my heart just, I don't really let him know, how much, I worry, but I pray. I am a prayer warrior. But to see what was going on with George Floyd, I think I had a meltdown like in my kitchen, because when I watched the video several times, it didn't hit me until I heard him call out for his mother. When he called out for his mother, I envisioned my son being down there with a police officer's knee. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this mother must be falling apart. And then you find out later his mother is deceased. She's not even living. So he's calling out to his mom that has already passed on. So it is so deep. And I'm telling you, just to kind of see what America is kind of going through with everything and the protesting. A lot of times, a lot of this stuff, even though for the white people, it's like it never happened to them. They can turn around, they can turn away because it wasn't in their face like it was. Look at the situation. We are in a pandemic. We're stuck at home. We couldn't leave. We're right there in front of the TV. This is all that they have, they see. So I think this is what triggered more conversation with the white individuals. Like, oh my God, I didn't know it was this bad. Well, yeah, you did. You just turned, you just turned away, and what benefited you, as they would say, privileged. That's the role they took, and they never said, oh, I get this opportunity. Let me try to bring someone of color with me. Now you're helping. Now you're saying, okay, if it's me, it's that person too. Let me bring them up as well. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of discussions that need to be had, and there's a lot of ownership that needs to be made between African Americans and whites. That's my point of view.
Absolutely. That's why I formed this panel and had this conversation, so we could have these conversations. And for me personally to say, I am so sorry for whatever I've done in my life and my ancestors, and what we could do together to start from now and build the bridge towards peace. One of the things, if anybody wants to jump in and comment on the last couple of minutes, I do want to give you that space. And then I want to move over to Erin, because she has a very wonderful point of view of the healing and the HeartMath space, which is just one of many modalities of what we can do, because we need to find the solutions. All of us are saying what we're feeling, but what is it? Let's identify that before the end of this hour and go to our participants and answer the questions they may have as well. So before we move on to Erin, is there anybody else that's, just burning to say something about Sharice's experience or any of the other shares that we've had so far?
Yeah, I would say something, because what Sharice is saying is the glaring problem that we're seeing. What Sharice is not saying is the fact that those two sons are going to have sons that will learn just what they've learned. And one of the things that I've noticed from Shannon's conversation is that we need to unlearn these things. And what Sharice's fear is that this pain from what I saw with my dad and my mom and what they saw with their dad and my mom has come to me and it's with my kids. Sharice is praying. Sharice is talking to her sons. What men don't do today is seek healing. Women seek the healing. Women pray. But what I'm not really seeing a lot of is women saying to their sons, you need to go to therapy. You need to see it as this is the problem. It's a systemic problem. I cannot stop the police from pulling you over. But when the police pulls you over, your fear mind cannot do anything to stop you. But what you know can be the reason why. From Rashard Brooks, who had a 45-minute conversation with the police officer before he got shot. My concern is I don't want our parents, Black parents for that matter, to just use a Black child or a Black man being killed as the only thing that they have to teach their kids. Most of the time you hear Black men that are being shot, that's when you hear the issue of Black people. And that's wrong. There are so many Black heroes. This child, this son of yours comes from generation of kings and queens. If we want to go far back, I tell my 9-year-old godson, he asked me one time, what's a nigger? I said, it's just a name that some dumb people came up with to describe some people that they feared. He said, really? I'm not gonna tell him what somebody thinks a nigger is, but I explained to him who he is. And I showed him pictures and books. And he just finished reading this book, Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, and he's starting to read The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. It's a book written by a kid from Malawi. He's studying African history, getting to know, we don't have this in our school curriculum, the history of Black heroes. And again, when I said that epigenetics is a problem, when every Black person comes up, every Black hero comes up, if you go all the way back to Africa, starting from wherever, Belgium, you know this Tess, Patrice Lumumba, when he came up with an idea of freeing Black people from the hands of Belgians who would chop their arms and chop their feet if they refused to do what they wanted them to do, and they'll put them in the line and shoot all of them soldiers because they refused to take their command. When Patrice was the only one, he was not even a president like the former president that was killed. He was the prime minister. What did they do? They put him in the pole, assassinated him, and shot him to death. They did the exact same thing to Thomas Sankara, who decided that Africa was going to have one currency, and he made a plan, perfect plan, that looked right and it was going to work for Africans to stop paying colonial taxes to European countries. Why is Africa paying taxes to European countries? Teach our sons these things so that they know where this fear of the white man is coming from. Why is the white man always wanting to kill the Black man? Why? Teaching them, they're gonna get that from school anyway. But if our sons don't understand the history of where they come from and the blood that runs through their veins, all African American men are going to remember is that they came from a generation of slaves. They're not, their ancestors are not slaves. They were kidnapped, brought to the United States, and enslaved. That's the history that they've tried to write for them. But they have a history that's hiding in museums and other places in the world. So my suggestion to Sharice is, these kids, 33, he's not too old to learn the truth about his past and his ancestor and his DNA. If we keep reminding them of what is afraid out there and not telling them why, that unlearning that Shannon is talking about is not going to happen. Because once you start showing him a picture of who he is truly, that's when that unlearning starts happening. And he now would want to start teaching his other white friends about who he truly is. That's my own comment about that.
I think also the education is really important, which I believe it was Shannon that brought up. You know, we have to teach our children how to treat one another. And especially now, there's more and more mixed, blended, interracial, beautiful families. And it's going to get even more that way because we are in a society that lives that way, thank God. So what is it that we can do to teach our children? What is it we can do to stop those cycles of abuse and mind thinking and heal? I want to bring in Erin right now because she started a movement within her meditation and her HeartMath. And I know you've been really quiet over there, but I know your brilliant, beautiful mind is buzzing with all kinds of things. So please.
I can't wait to hear. I've been
Yes.
waiting.
My heart has been breaking open more than my mind, and I just want to say it's as uncomfortable as it is, just bearing witness and being a part of this conversation and being able to be here. As a white lady, I appreciate that I'm able to be here. So what I would like to share is a message from the heart and really reorienting all of us back to the heart. And I'm going to break it down very scientifically and then move from another place into spirituality, if you will, into the soul's healing for all of us, which is, I think, what's being called forth. I am a trainer with HeartMath. They are a research institute that's been studying the heart and its energetics for over 30 years. And one of the first things that they realized was the heart actually sends far more information up to the brain than the other way around, like 80% more. So when we talk about trying to free mental slavery, we really have been sold a book of goods that our mind is what, should be the command center. Our heart is actually our command center. In our minds, there is the duality. There will always be the duality of seeing whatever it is, male, female, black, white, right, wrong. But it's when we can come to the heart where we find our unity and we can find these commonalities and find these emotions that we all share, no matter what color you are or what your situation is. So I think understanding that the heart is really our command center, and knowing that when we're experiencing fear or worry or anxiety, the signal that goes from our heart up to our brain literally only goes to the base of the brain, which is the amygdala, which is all about pattern recognition, and it just keeps you trapped in fight or flight. So just scientifically understanding that when you're experiencing fear, so as an African-American boy hearing sirens, and for his mom, there is fear going through, and literally the signal that's going all the way up to the brain is just being trapped in that place. So it is a loop, and it is a prison, if you will, just keeping you locked there. If you're able to experience compassion, which I think is really being called forth now, compassion and care and love and peace, if we can experience this, there is a different signal that gets sent all the way up to the brain, to the prefrontal cortex, which is where creative thinking is, which is where solutions are, which is like 10% of our brain that most of us never touch if we're stuck in kind of this fight or flight. And the heart is also attached to the nervous system. So if you're experiencing a depleting emotion, again, such as fear or worry, you are depleting your system. You are not working optimally. If we can switch and we can come to the heart and we can find compassion, we can change what's happening physiologically and energetically in the space between us. So that's the science of what HeartMath is. And I really encourage people to look into it, because they've also found that if I can stay coherent and I can be experiencing an emotion of peace, I can affect the field. I can actually have a difference and I can affect somebody else. So for me, the practice has been about how can I find coherence within myself. And the HeartMath meditations I have been leading have been about guiding people back to their heart. I started doing this, I've been a trainer for many years, but I started when COVID first hit back in March, knowing people were gonna need skills and tools to navigate this uncharted, place, and people were gonna be going towards fear and worry. I began starting like a service call. For 2 weeks, I thought I would be offering it. And obviously COVID continued to happen. And so I continued to offer these calls. And when all of this happened with George Floyd and the protests, I realized that I had created cultivated like this light worker, army of all different colors of people that knew how to center in their heart and knew how to compassionately listen to a different point of view and listen with the heart, which is different than listening with the mind and trying to figure out, like, we're not going to be able to solve this problem at the level that this problem was created, which was our minds. It is really calling us to go deeper into our heart and to listen and to acknowledge. And so from doing these HeartMath meditations with everyone, I reached out to my friend Shannon Amos and invited her to come on and to begin having these hard conversations. And she has brought forth other people. And I think it's in this space of first centering into the heart and getting coherent so that we can actually listen to one another is how we will begin to heal both sides, heal all of ourselves. So that's what I would just like to offer, and open to any questions, comments, suggestions.
And I'd like to jump in behind you. When I think of mental slavery, I think that it is anything that takes us away from our center. And that's what really spirituality is. It's our center. It's the core of who we really are. And right now, what we've been witnessing in this country and what we're observing as happening has been a very intentional assault on the subconscious mind. This fear mongering that, has been coming from our government, the imagery that is creating fear very intentionally is an attack on the subconscious mind. It puts us into fight or flight mode. It takes us out of a way to be centered in the heart. It takes us away from who we really are, because and from our abilities to make sound decisions, because when you're in fight or flight mode, all your sensories are challenged. And so the practice of HeartMath, the practice of mindfulness and meditation brings us back into our center. It allows us to see through and hear through the noise and the fear, because we can come back into the present moment and find our compassion. And therefore, when we feel these feelings of fear and anger and anxiety and all the symptoms of fear rising up in our body, we can become aware of it. And by becoming aware of it, we can start to shift that awareness away from the things that we're afraid of into the present moment and into our own healing and well-being. And so I really am grateful for Erin for creating this bridge, inviting all of you to step into that heart-centered practice, because it is in this place of the heart that we'll find our healing and our connection to one another. Without all of these, while the duality is there, it helps us to move through it and to understand why we're really here.
I like that. Erin, I actually like what you shared. And that's something that I believe, I don't know how easy it is to access that. And I believe it's something, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
I don't know how easy it is to access that, because a lot of people that are healing, usually you will not find that are hurting, they don't usually go to the hospital to get treatment. They want to find their own little remedies around until it gets to a point where it's unbearable. And then they go to the hospital and then they want it fixed right away. So the issue, what you're saying, is that there's a lot of people that are sick in the mind. And it looks like there's small things, and they'll probably not be looking for what you're doing until it becomes that fear and that distraction that is set up by the government and the media, until it becomes a big problem where the alarm bells are going off on all directions, and then they start saying something is wrong with me, or I am crazy. That's the code word for it. And then they start looking for a therapist. Meanwhile, what you have is saying that whatever you're going through right now, it may be small, but here is how we can help you to unfold that and then really get back to that center. Because that center is the place that has been shattered, and then we have that distraction. It is over here, that's what the media will say, and we look. It's over there, then that's what the government will say, and we will look at it. It's over here, that's what money will say, and we're looking. And it's like trying to pull us into different directions. And it's this one's fault, it's that one's fault. It's really something that we really need to be able to pull back to center, to know if media is showing us something, we look at it and go, that's a distraction. I am still here. This is a distraction. I am still here. And so I want to ask this question to John. Based on what you've heard Shannon and Aaron share, and your experience, you and Cherise have a similar experience. Based on what you've heard, how would you help your kids as a white man to emancipate from mental slavery at this age where they're still young and tender and they still have room to learn?
This is a tough one, because maybe I'm just overestimating my kids, but I kind of feel like my kids are very self-confident and see themselves as capable, and they don't believe the hype of being a lesser than. My son was a scholarship student for athletics at Fresno State, and my daughter's at UCLA. So I'm not saying there isn't part of their deep psyche that somehow they're taking on some of this, but their mom is very bright and hardworking, and they have a realistic outlook of the world. But as far as if I believe they see themselves as capable in sort of society that's lacking, and that society doesn't quite get it right. So my challenge is how they deal with the frustration, like with the George Floyd thing. When I'm talking to my son, and I say, I feel really bad. What can I do? Do you feel like that could happen to you? And he says, no. And then he goes, but then again, and it's like, that's that thing with him. I mean, that's just something that I can't take away from him. Do you know what I mean? And the other thing that's heartbreaking is I want to think that it's shifting, Shannon, and that we can do this work and the world can become a better place. As a white person, it's hard for me to sell that racism is going to get better. I mean, maybe it's going to be on the margins, and I'm praying, committed for that to be. My kids are 23 and 22. They're beautiful kids. They're cynical. I've read stuff where maybe older African American folks might have some optimism because they've seen the civil rights movement, this, that, and the other. If you're 20 and of color, the history has not been good. So do you know what I mean? There hasn't been a lot of wins, for lack of a better word. So what breaks my heart with my kids is that it's like, it is what it is, Dad. I know you love us. I know you're trying, but I'm kind of the classic, I'm going to plan for the worst and hope for the best, but this is here and I don't see it changing anytime soon. So I try to do my part to make it better. I think my kids see them for who they are, and they see the society and American way of life as being corrupt and unfair, and that's where the cancer is. Yeah. I'm not saying they haven't taken some of it on, but if I could focus my efforts on something, I'd cure society more than my kids. Yes, maybe I'm delusional. I'm sorry.
Well, we have a long road ahead of us.
We certainly do. It's a quote. Maybe we only know transatlantic slavery and what we know, which was about 400 years, but we don't know what happened before that time, which was also crazy. So we have a long way to go. If it took that long, we hope it's not going to take that long to undo it, but it's going to be a minute.
Yeah.
I think it's going to take a minute, but I also, I want to go to you, Erin. I was going to actually lead this back to you. It's going to take a minute, but I think that people are more awake than ever. I have the optimistic Pollyanna kind of approach to it because I think that more people are offered the opportunity to stand up and defend our brothers and sisters of color. I think that we're being much less complacent and saying this has to stop now. And even if it's just the small 6 of us and the few people that listen or the replay of the show, and we build these communities of people and keep those healing going, I feel that I have hope. So Erin, I know you wanted to say something, so please share. And then I want to point it back to you for one of the solutions, another deeper dive on the solution. And then Ansa, if you can kind of look in the question world, that would be great too.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that through the research of HeartMath, they have come up with practical like tips and tools of how to keep in your center and how to bring the energy into your heart and be coherent. And again, change that signal all the way up into the brain. And the number one, the first technique that they teach you is literally heart-focused breathing. So I would actually love to just talk you through it for 30 seconds because I think it's a reorientation and you'll be able to feel it. And this is something that you don't need to go to a doctor for, but if everybody just taught another person how to breathe in their heart, it begins to slow the mind energy and bring us back to our center. So if you want to close your eyes and just focus your attention on your heart. And allow the breath to come in through the heart, breathing in a little deeper and slower. And then exhaling from the heart. And again, just slowing the mental energy, centering it in the heart as you breathe in. And out from the heart. Breathing in compassion, care, connection. And breathing out from the heart. And just open eyes. Can you feel that in 20 seconds, we're in a different space?
Relaxing.
Yeah. It centers us and it activates a different part of who we are. And I think just even knowing that and being able to share that, that's one of the very first HeartMath tools. And again, it's free. It's our breath and our attention, our awareness, our consciousness. If we can continue to bring it back to the heart in these difficult conversations. But I do think it's about each one of us stepping out of our comfort zone and being willing to have different choices, but we have to create them from the heart, not from the mind. And another tip or tool technique that HeartMath offers, it's called a freeze frame, where literally you acknowledge the problem, you go into heart-focused breathing, so you get yourself coherent, and you ask your heart, what would be a more efficient attitude or action or viewpoint, and you listen from your heart on what it is that your soul is asking you to do. And then you intentionally commit to that action or attitude and you move on. And that process can take 20 minutes or it could take 20 seconds. It's just becoming aware, I think, of acknowledging a problem, but bringing it to the heart to really look for a solution.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's exactly where I wanted you to go, and intuitively you were already there. So I love your guidance and awareness, and I think that's really important right now because I hear a lot of people, you know, we're in this pandemic, I hear a lot of people having anxiety of the mask situation. So you know, some people have breathing problems or whatever. So I encourage in every second of the day to be able to be open to do that exercise, to center our hearts, because then that opens up our conductors of compassion, which broadens our scope of just, you know, going into the grocery store and having to deal with that and putting the mask on. Then you broaden the awareness to, oh, who's in my neighborhood, who's in my community, and then how can we help to take down these walls that are building up and really build that bridge of peace. So is there anyone else that wants to express anything before we go into the Q&A time? And Anze, have you seen any questions?
Yeah,
I've got a lot of things over there. Anyone else want to say anything before we move into Q&A? So Anze, do you have questions from the...
Yeah, this question is from Jemme. It says that how do we free ourselves from the bondage of unworthiness or not good enough in a society where we are not all being accorded equal opportunities? I think that I would ask that question to Cherise. I mean, we can all answer, but I'll let Cherise start.
No, what was the caller's name? I mean, what was the person?
Mamois. The name is
Manuel.
Mamois.
Manoir. Okay. I truly believe that it takes really knowing your worth, knowing you know, that true love that you have for yourself. Because if you know your worth, if you value what you believe, what you stand for, what your purpose is, it's almost like you can shine a little bit brighter. You could be a more help to someone else. But I do think just knowing who you are, you know, just in your heart, like that whole exercise that Aaron just had us do. Just
like looking inside, you mean?
Exactly. That's what I would say.
I agree, because I think that if I may also answer that partially and continue from what Cherise is saying, I felt that. There was a time in my life where I felt like I was an ugly duckling and nobody could tell me I was beautiful, and I believed them. I thought they were crazy, they need glasses or something. Maybe that's why I'm wearing glasses, because I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But honestly, it's like a lot of the cycle, like what we've been talking about, a lot of the cycle and repeated circumstances of people feeling things and hearing things and seeing things. And you at some point go, well, so if I don't have hair like the white man, then I'm not beautiful enough. If I have nappy hair, then maybe my hair is not pretty enough. If I'm not light skinned like this person that has the privilege, then I'm not beautiful enough. And so that continues to the point where the child starts hearing the mother say these things, and the child starts believing that this is what is true. And so it goes again to what Erin is saying. Erin and Shannon, you guys talk a lot about healing. I can see that there's a lot of similarities there, but the practice in healing is different, but it's for the same purpose. I had to look on the inside. And I would say that John doesn't know this, but I remember there was a time when I was doing that healing period, and he used to gift me birthday gifts were Jim Rohn CDs, books that I still have in my bookshelves now. And I would be like, what does this white man think he is giving me books? Doesn't he see, like, you know, cute things I can get? But that was value that he was adding to me. And when I started reading these books, it was not me looking at the world. It was me talking on the inside of my head, reading these books and having a conversation with the author in my head. And so it started working on the inside of me. And I started seeing how all of that was coming out. And the moment I started realizing that someone like Tess may also have insecurities like I do, that doesn't make me better than Tess. That doesn't make Tess better than me. That just means we're two human beings that have challenges differently. But it's hard to tell that to somebody who has spent maybe 50, 60 years of their lives believing that they're bad or believing that there's something wrong with them. So until somebody helps them to see that they've been distracted so much, if they close their eyes, like if Erin were to tell us to breathe with our eyes open, I bet you I'll be seeing a whole lot of things and I'll be hearing her from a distance. But the moment we closed our eyes, we went on the inside. I started seeing a picture of my heart. I could imagine it beating, and I was seeing the left and right ventricles, whatever all that stuff is. But in my mind, I was looking on the inside. The moment we start looking outside, we start seeing these distractions when the inside is saying, hey, come on in. I'm here.
I want to address that as well, because yes, of course, I've gone through my self-worth questions, my insecurities. I was terribly shy as a young girl. I couldn't even speak. And now you can't shut me up. But I really think that that's one of the main reasons why GWEN was so important for me to find and to develop. Global Women's Empowerment Network is really about all of us. So I always say we do GWEN with the men. And one of the things, our mission is transforming lives through the power of storytelling. So what are the stories that we're telling ourselves that keep us in that loop of being unworthy? You know, what is it that we heard when we were little that became the blueprint that creates our story today? So how can we release those stories? How can we get the tools to do that? They could be reading books like what Anze is saying. They could be taking HeartMath courses like what Erin creates and facilitates. It could be writing a journal. It could be writing your book. It could be taking one of the GWEN workshops that are coming up later in the fall, which I'll talk about at the end. It's really about finding our own self-love. And I know all of us have tipped on that topic as well. It's really about self-love, because when you have that self-love and that value, you won't allow people to come in and abuse you and make you feel anything less than what you perfectly are at the time.
Yes, yes. And Memoir, I would like to say to you that bouncing off of what Tess is saying, is that owning your story, owning the authentic story of your life, every part of it, the most difficult parts, the deepest parts, the ugliest parts, owning your story, being authentic to who you are, and knowing that you're a human being, or you're a human being, and that we all go through trials and tribulations in our life. We all go through ups and downs. We all make mistakes. And part of, mental slavery, again, is anything that takes you outside of your center. And so when you step outside of your center, you're seeking validation from others. You're seeking validation from the outside world. You don't need that validation. You are perfect, imperfect human, having a human experience. And the more that you can remember that and remember who you are and come back to your center, that's where your healing will begin. And it is a daily practice. Healing is a daily practice of self-care, as Tess was saying, whether you are writing in a journal or it is whatever it is that speaks to your heart. And I think the more that you come back into that, and knowing that you're not a victim of by being a victim of the outside, you're giving away your power. You can empower yourself by just owning whatever your experience has been as being a part of your experience. And that's where your real healing will begin. So I just want to send you love and light. And we see you and appreciate you for being here.
And Anze is known Mamwa since they were teenagers in Cameroon, and I met both of them recently, and I just want to hold up a mirror to Mamwa because she's one of the most fabulous, beautiful, inside and out, amazing women that I know, with such an important voice to have in the world. So I just want to send a lot of love to you, because there's no bone in your body that should be feeling unworthy at all. You're so amazing.
Yeah, I think that question was more general for people that
Yeah.
were asking it and things like that. I
Can I just add?
observation that sure, Erin.
I just want to remind us all, we are spiritual beings having this human incarnation. And to me, the journey of it is about learning to love unconditionally. And the journey really is moving from our heads to our hearts. The heart is actually the very first organ that's formed. It is where the soul is. That is the first cells of your body form your heart, not your mind. So when we can consistently remember that we're here, you know, in our hearts, having this experience and being able to own it and being able to get in touch with that soul essence of who we are, we don't need to seek outside for any validation or any answers. We can truly find them inside.
True. I was gonna make an observation that if you notice, the two people that have done a lot of heart work, Erin and Shannon, when they speak, they're very soft and their voices are very coordinated. And then when you hear the two talkers, Tess and me, I'm not saying we haven't done hard work, but I know that because you guys teach these things, I can see the difference in you. And if there's one thing that I've learned is that I should learn to be a human being and not a human doing. When I start being a human doing, and then I start getting distracted and I'm looking on the outside. But all of these conversations that we're having, I think somebody's asking a question, Jinwi, and I'll go back to another question from Mamoa. It says that how can our Caucasian friends who are here help us to address those who do not see these kinds of problems? I don't know who wants to address that, but I think the very Caucasian person I'm seeing here is John. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'll represent the Caucasians.
Thank God, John, represent the Caucasians.
Represent.
His
Yeah,
name is John White.
and everything. I will say though, before I answer that, I do like Aaron and Shannon's energy about the subject because I am passive aggressive. So by the time I get to talking about it, there's a little fire associated with it. And that's never a good way to have a constructive conversation. With friends, you know, it's interesting. You have friends, you know them through Little League and you like them, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll say something. And it's just like, damn. And like the other day, a guy was saying to me, I don't know why the Jews and the blacks don't get along. I'm sure you've all heard this. And this guy happened to be Jewish and talked about the similarities. And we're just out here having a cocktail, just trying to have fun, you know. He goes, the difference is the work ethic. My people, I go, whoa, well, I have this moment because part of you wants to say, you know, you're a racist, you know, and then the friendship maybe dies, nothing constructive happens, and then I go, well, let me hit him with some Dave Chappelle. You know, I said, you know, these are people that were enslaved for 400 years, built the country. There was a time that the greatest part of the GMP was the actual slaves. They built this country. So of all the things you might think about African Americans, don't start talking about work ethic, dude. Just they've worked hard. So he's like, well, what do you? I go, dude, I'm just saying. I mean, I like you, this, that. You see the world through this lens. I'm just trying to help you readjust it. And of all the folks that I know, most people want just a fair shake and let me put me in coach and give me a fair shake and have the same rules apply. So I guess it's kindly rebuke, see the person for where they are, say you still love them, but you know, that thing you heard kind of grated on me and I don't really find it to be true. Maybe you say, you know, my dad taught me the same thing and here's what I've come to learn. But to just offer it in a loving way, because I think a lot of what Shannon's been saying has really been resonating with me. This otherness of how this duality, when somebody's different, then that allows you to treat them, think of them differently, less, and to somehow ascribe these other things versus, I think there's a question about race. We're just one. We have the same attributes. There might be slight differences in our color, skin, and cultural, but we're basically the same. And it's that separation that causes us to freak. And in America, that separation is reinforced and has real dire consequences for people of color. But yeah, there's a lot of people walking, myself included, walking with ignorance. Little, just because I married a black woman doesn't mean I'm cured. I got little nodules every now and then I lean against. I go, that shit's inside of me. Sorry about that. That's inside of me. So yeah, you have to be open to changing, and hopefully you're can help other friends, grow. And then also, I'm sure other people are gonna check me and say, John, you might want to explore that. Aaron, I'm sure after will say, John, let's talk about your heart. Notice a few things.
I noticed some things.
I love what John is saying.
Anze will put hands on me. I will be fine.
Hands on you, John.
It's time for the barbecue, yes.
Yeah, that's so funny.
I love what John is saying. I would challenge all white people who have an open heart to step out of their comfort zone and become an ally. Become an ally. And if you don't know how to become one, ask how you can become one. Ask someone, what can I do to make a difference? And, there's so many ways. There's so many ways to protest. There's so many ways to be an activist. There's so many ways to show up. Just sitting still and doing nothing, it makes you complicit. So step out of your comfort zone. I would challenge everyone to do that.
It's funny, if I just add to this, you can imagine the rich conversations I have with my daughter. And she makes fun of the woke white people and this sense of, are you truly woke, or do you want all the benefits of being woke because it's expected of you, because that's part of the role, but you really aren't woke.
Oh my God.
And anyway, we can have that, but I was reading with someone, a person of color was saying, there's a lot of white people like me that have read the books. Like, I've got White Fragility and I've got How to Be Anti-Racist, both books that need to be read. But oftentimes when we bring to the equation, when Shan or someone of color might say something like, oh, I get you, sis, I read so-and-so. And it could be a little condescending and demeaning. Oh, I'm living this shit, and I don't know how about my language. I live in this stuff, and now you're telling me about the book. So my friend on Facebook posted this thing that really resonated to me, which is be an activist. Like, that's another version of that ally, Shannon, which is like to do something about it. I mean, there's a variety of things. There's voting, there's healthcare, there's prison reform. There's a variety. You can be a mentor. There's a variety of things that you can do and actually act on it, rather than be that guy that's read a lot of books but really hasn't changed how he's living his life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I hear you. I'm hearing you saying be uncomfortable, because a lot of times it's the fear of being uncomfortable, and I think that even though people don't want to say it, when white people were protesting that they don't want to wear masks, and you see a doctor in a hospital wearing one for 22 hours, saving a life that could be your auntie or cousin, family member, or someone, but they're wearing that same mask that you don't want to wear, and you're claiming that it's a problem. Or you find somebody's problem being, I want to protest because I need a haircut. And then you find Black people protesting that they need to live, they want to breathe. And you see the disparity between the two, and you're thinking, what's going on here? That's just what you're saying, as in, get uncomfortable. Just let your hair grow for a little bit. Feel the discomfort of knowing that something can be taken away from you that you deserve, that's your human right. And no matter how much you go on the inside, when you open your eyes, that thing is still there, but in your inside, it's peaceful. You may still be killed. You may have that peace, and if somebody's coming to hurt you, they will hurt you if you don't protect yourself. And if there is a white person there that could protect you, I saw a group, I don't know if it was in Colorado or Kentucky, one of them, a group of white kids, and they just held hands and they stood there and blocked some Black kids behind them that white people were coming to attack them. I think they were all in a protest. So the white kids went ahead and the black kids were behind. So it's that thing where when they may have gone into their inside and they may have been in contact with their heart subconsciously without even knowing. But there is that awareness and there is that do somethingness, which makes them feel like I'm putting my life in line. These people could literally hurt me, but I have some privilege that, you know, I could cash into and they will not come that close. And that's the thing, because when I see a lot of the people that are protesting and the people that are angry, some of them are actually my friends. And some of them are saying, well, I mean, I don't like what happened to George Floyd, but do they really need to burn that building? Flip it over. Well, I really don't like that they're burning that building, but what happened to George Floyd, I don't really like. That's the bad thing.
Yeah.
That's the problem. In the military, if somebody goes missing, we're looking, we're sorry. If a weapon goes missing, forget it. Nobody's getting out until that weapon is found. That's the difference between really looking at the issue and we're forgetting the fact that the value that is placed on one person on the outside is different from the value that is placed on another person. I'm not trying to say that what Shannon and Aaron are saying is not right. It's 100% truth, because if anything is happening and you're dying, you know that you have peace inside. But the truth is, when you go out there and this stuff has to happen, no one is, there's nothing that you can do to stop it. You just can't. You know what I mean? Sharice's sons are there. They've learned it. They know what it is. But if they learn that peace and they have that comfort and they know how to avoid those distractions and they become centered and they understand who their being is, and all of a sudden they're in the car and somebody decides to act a fool, all of that stuff can still happen. And when it happens, that person that's doing it gets a paid vacation, while we go out in the streets and we start rioting and saying, no, we don't like it. The last person, I'm sorry if I'm going to take a little time on this, but I'll just be really short. The one thing that the one example of this is this kid, Elijah, in Colorado. That broke me. Not that George Floyd and the others didn't break me, but Elijah was a kid amongst a lot of kids that were killed. But this child, everybody, white, black, and blue, would tell you that Elijah was a beautiful soul. He would not hurt a fly. And he was telling these people that I am not that person. Elijah was centered. Elijah would play music to animals. Now I would not play music to animals. I'm sorry. It's not, no offense to animals. I'll love them. I'll pet them and say bye-bye. But I'm not playing music to animals. Okay, if you come to that place where you're playing a violin to animals and you're singing for them, there is a different kind of center that you've reached. And no matter how much he screamed to these people, I'm not that person. I don't do that stuff. Please let me go. And they still killed him. That's the problem, why I'm saying it doesn't matter how much healing we do until the white person learns to heal. This is going to be an imbalanced equation and it will always hang on one side. John has learned healing, Erin has learned healing, Tess has learned healing, but we still have a ton of people out there, and that's why we're having this conversation, to be able to learn how to tell our white folk, please, I need you to be uncomfortable for me. Mm-hmm. I need you to be uncomfortable for the sake of my son. I need you to be uncomfortable for the sake of the women. I need you to be uncomfortable so that this world can have peace, because you may not see the privilege you have, but you probably not go through what I go through. And no matter how much I cry, nobody's going to listen until you say something. So
powerful. Yeah, I know there's a lot of questions here. So what I'm going to do at the end of the show is I'm going to save them, and we'll find a way to answer those in the forum on the YouTube channel. Because I'm being conscious of time here because we had a little false start with the technical problem with the audio. Is there any closing comments from the panelists before we close the show down? And I want to thank the participants that have been here and offered their questions. Is there anything that you want to say in closing as far as a conclusion to this beautiful conversation?
If I could just say, I want to thank some of the panelists for helping me. I know I have an idea of how I want to be in this world and how to make changes and to be an ally. I do know that it's tiring and difficult, and you watch too much CNN, and then you listen to Donald Trump and you feel self-righteous. It's a whole mix of things. So part of I like is this notion of unlearning stuff that's not true, reminding you of your divinity, and then, for lack of a better word, sort of putting on your peaceful warrior armor to just steady yourself for this journey. And I like some of the stuff that Aaron and Shannon did. I'm interested in exploring that so I can just be stronger and take care of myself, so I'm an energetic and a tireless warrior for that cause.
Love it.
It's the energy with which we bring. If we're angry and fighting for peace,
Sure.
there's that duality within us that will continue and just continue and continue. And so it is my daily practice every day to be as balanced and centered in my heart, and to know that that really does have a ripple energetic effect. And yes, to step out of myself in ways that I'm called to. And I appreciate being able to just, as I said before, like bear witness and listen. And Anza, you have a very powerful voice. As you're speaking, I was just feeling into, Tess, the energy with which she created this Global Women's Empowerment Network that also is about empowering our men. Like, it's a pure spark, and it is about being able to listen to other voices so we can honor it. And I feel really proud and privileged that I was a part of this today. So thank all of you. I will take away something from each one of you.
Same here. I'd just like to thank Tess and this group of amazing people and all those listening. It's through our stories that we find a connection. We find something that resonates with a part of our lives when we listen to other stories. And I really, truly believe that the more we share, the more that we connect, the more we inspire that healing. And so let's all continue to step outside of our comfort zones. Many of us live outside of our comfort zones on a daily basis, but let's all step out of our comfort zones and do the work we can to not only honor ourselves, but to honor the people that we love and the community that we want to see in this world. So just thank you, everyone. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yes, I just want to say thank you for inviting me. Thank you for introducing me to these lovely panelists. I have learned a lot. But what I would like to say is that, especially those with children, you must continue to teach. That even if no matter how old they get, if it seems like they're not listening, they're listening, and you must continue to teach, because when several are going left and yours want to go right, that will be the difference maker. And I'm speaking from experience, where I have taught, my sons, if they're in a situation, this is what you do. No matter what your friends are doing, this is what you should do. And it always turned out to be a pretty good ending with that. So I definitely just say continue to teach. I remember someone saying, and I'll close on this, if you're the smartest one in your circle is too small, So I'll leave with that.
That's very true. Thank you, Sharice.
Anze, do you have any last minute
I am so grateful to have shared this time with you guys, and I would really love to stay connected with all of you, especially Shannon, Sharice, and Erin, not John. Um,
You didn't say me either, but that's okay.
I'm
We're
already
connected.
how connected can I be with
I
you?
know, I know.
I'm co-hosting your show. But I wanted to say to Erin and Shannon, Erin and Shannon, that my journey of healing is a continuous one, and I feel like every day, because of what you're talking about, that field, I feel like I keep attracting more and more of people like you in my life, and just listening to you guys, I kept taking notes. It reminds me to continue to remember to stay centered, because sometimes I allow the distractions. And I think that that's one of the things that might be missing when we go to this healing sessions and we feel like, oh, because I've gone to one, that's great, and that's it. It's like you said, it's a continuous thing. It's like a shower. You know, if you don't take one for 3 to 4 to 5 days, you're gonna start smelling some things. So I really appreciate you guys for being here and for sharing this. And I hope that the audience and the people that are listening will take something home from here. Um, it's people, white men like John, that have helped me to see the difference in not thinking that all white people are bad. And it's the kinds of examples that someone like John would set that will help other white folks to kind of realize that we're not supposed to just wait for Black people to heal. We're not supposed to wait for the system to change. We are the system. We created the system. And until that system is completely transformed, Black people will always be in trouble. And that's where we are right now. We're celebrating 4th of July for one person's freedom while the other person is still fighting for freedom. That imbalance will always be in us. And so we need to go out there today, whether people are popping fireworks, and find one white person. We, as Black people, the 3 Black people on this panel, can say, we can go to our friends and tell them to be compassionate to their white folks, and to reach out to those that are not teaching their kids the history of their Black, ancestry, not just the slavery part, the good one, to start teaching them these things. And when they start seeing what they're reflecting, it will give them a different perspective versus teaching them how to avoid the police all the time. That alone is not just what's going to help them, because if they never encounter police in their lifetime, they still need to live a life. And they can't be in a classroom where students are talking and they don't have anything to share. But meanwhile, there's a wealth of knowledge that you have not read. There's Marcus Garvey, Grant Baldwin. There's so many people that have written books that they can learn, and there are videos and documentaries that they can watch. It's just something to create a family time and say, here, let's learn something about our ancestors and see what good it was, something outside of transatlantic slavery, something outside of that suffering, like Erin and Sharon was saying. Find something positive that you can connect with, and then grow from there. And for the white folks on the panel, is to challenge your one white person today to say, for independence, let me find one white person to tell them, I challenge you to be uncomfortable for the sake of Black people, so that we can all experience that freedom at some point. And that's all I have to say. And thank you again, Tess, for allowing me to be here.
Oh, I am so blown away, honored, blessed. I can't even come up with all the words that are in my head right now. That my heart is, along with Erin's, just exploding with so many beautiful, energetic energies from you all. So thank you all for being on this panel, to having this uncomfortable conversation, to start the dialogue within our communities. And thanks for the people that have participated today. And for those that are watching the show in the future, please reach out to all of these people. Read the books that they've written, take the HeartMath courses through Erin, and I just thank you all for coming today. Our charity spotlight this week is the GWEN Luminary Award winner last year, Annalyn McCord, who is the president of Together One Heart, which cares for and secures the rights of young women and girls who are victims or at risk of becoming victims of slavery. And as GWEN, we'd like to be the voice of the voiceless, so we're working tirelessly with trafficked and abused survivors. July 11th, which is next week, we're going to continue our Reveal the Heal stories. And we check out our summer fall workshop schedule. We have Recalibration with Filippo Voltaggio, The Journey Within with Wanda Webster and Christopher Mack. And part 4 of the summer series is August 1st, which is Civic Duty to Civil Passion. And don't forget to download your GWEN Alert because it's free and it gives you safety and connected to your family if you're ever in times of need. And a thank you to Lyft for providing us with free rides for those in need. I'm going to end with this quote that is from Bob Marley's song, "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." And now we'll go to our Mind Over Matter minute, which is a minute that we take out for breathing and just centering ourselves. So this week, I'm going to dedicate this one to Erin Toppenberg. And instead of Mind Over Matter minute, I'm going to call it the Heart Over Mind minute, where we can embrace our heart, open up, and heal ourselves. And how can we be free? Let's ask those questions to ourselves and get the solutions and find peace within. From my home to yours, find love all around. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Each
you.
one, teach one. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, a Mind Over Matter minute.